good stewards know we'd be laughed at if we had a moving van follow our hearse. In our gospel passage today from Luke that Deacon Jim just read, Jesus is at it again. Once again, talking about stuff. And at the end of the gospel passage, he says what he says so frequently in the gospels. He says, look, you cannot serve both God and money, God and stuff. You've got to make a choice. Now here's what Jesus is not saying. Jesus is not saying we can't have money and stuff. All of us know, he knows better than we. All of us know. Money and stuff are essential in our lives. Absolutely necessary in our lives. So we've got to examine carefully where they fall in our lives. Because if they're number one and God isn't, we're going to have trouble when we wind up at the pearly gate. Essentially, what Jesus wants all of us to do is budget. I do a lot of counseling, and I know many of us do not budget. We just kind of haphazardly let expenses come into our lives. Well, Jesus says we got to budget. And at the top of our list, number one on our list should be a determination of how much time we're going to give to God in prayer and in service. And at the top of our list should be how much money we're going to give to God through charities and church. And then, numbers 2 through the last, make all those decisions that are essential. How much money we're going to spend on housing, on utilities. How much money are we going to spend on vehicles, on gasoline? How much money are we going to spend on insurance, on food, on clothing? And then when we get to the bottom, and if we have red ink, then we've got to make some changes. But we don't change that God is at the top. He's God. We sliver away from numbers 2 through last. We take a little bit here and a little bit there. And again, I do a lot of counseling, so I hear people tell me all the time, but Father, I can't do that. Well, yes, we can. God has given us good minds. He's given us free will. We are in charge. The money isn't in charge. We are in charge. We get to make the decision. Here's a modern parable. Bartholomew was a concert violinist, a master. He owned a several $million-dollar Stradivarius. Bartholomew was also widely known for being an outspoken Christian. The people who came to his concerts knew they might get a little homilette. Well, one evening, after he played his first selection and got a standing, roaring round of applause, Bartholomew got up, walked over to a chair. Let's make out like this is the back of the chair. And then he took his violin and like a rock star, he started smashing it on the back of the chair until there was nothing there but pieces. And the audience, they gasped. What's he doing? And Bartholomew said, hey, don't worry. That was not my Stradivarius. That was a cheap violin I bought to make this point. I make the music, not the violin. I'm in charge. I have talents from God. I make the music. And then he went and got his Stradivarius. And he came and put it on the chair. And 10 seconds went by, and there was just this awkward silence, 30 seconds, a minute. And after a minute, Bartholomew said, "Anyone hear any music?" And that's because the violin doesn't make the music. I, with the talents God has given me, I make the music. And then he said, "Okay, now I'm going to replay my first selection." And he did. And at the end there was again a standing, roaring round of applause. And Bartholomew asked, "How many of you could detect any significant difference between the time I played it with the cheap violin and when I played it just a few seconds ago on the Stradivarius?" A few little timid hands were raised, but the overwhelming majority of the people did not raise their hands. And Bartholomew, before he went on with his concert, made his last point. He said, "Again, I'm going to tell you, I'm in charge. You're in charge. Not just of playing the music, but of living our lives, making the decision about how we're going to live our lives." How does Jesus want us to live our lives? He wants us to have fun. He wants us to have proper food, shelter, and clothing. But the emphasis should be on the adjective, proper food, shelter, and clothing. And how much money we make will determine what is proper. But what is always proper is that God be at the top of the list. And yes, that can happen because we are in charge. Here's another modern parable. It took place during the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Boris was a member of the Communist Politburo. And he was asked one year if he would come and speak at a Christian prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. And he agreed. And the first thing that Boris said shocked the people at the breakfast. Because Boris said, "You know, your Christian gospel is far, far, far more powerful than our Communist Manifesto." And there was applause at the breakfast. And Boris said, "Well, you might want to hold your applause. Your Christian gospel is far, far, far more powerful than our Communist Manifesto. But here's the difference between you and us. We say we believe in communism, and we live it. You say you believe in what your gospel preaches, but you very frequently do not live it." And then Boris asked the question of the people at the breakfast. Boris said, "What kind of person does your Jesus despise the most?" And one brave soul said, "Hypocrites." He was always all over the scribes and the Pharisees because they said one thing and did another. He made it plain. He despised hypocrites. And Barr said, bingo. We live our Communist Manifesto. We say we believe in it, and we live it. You say you believe your gospel. You say that God is first in your lives, but I don't see you live. My sisters and brothers, if you're comfortable in doing so, join me for just a few seconds. Close your eyes. Think about the day you're going to be buried. See your hearse going down the West Bank Expressway, its headlights flashing. And then look up. Look behind the hearse. And you see a big 18-wheel tractor trailer, a moving van, with all of your stuff. Okay? You close your eyes, open them. We're going to get to the pearly gates. That moving van is not. My sisters and brothers, we are all called to be good stewards. And good stewards know we'd be laughed at if we had a moving van follow